This week on Eye on the Clouds.
Really cool. Yeah. Actually, the mix is pretty good. Yeah, the mix is good.
Just before we do, I'd just like to mention something that I heard of recently. There's an English lady called Polly Higgins, who's a barrister, and she has taken on as the Earth lawyer to eradicate ecocide. And she's already spoken at the United Nations, and we'll be getting some more information about her, but she's going to continue with the representation to be Earth's lawyer. Apparently there is a clause in the United Nations to clean up destruction if there's been war, which I didn't know existed. But what this lady wants to do is to make it mandatory that anywhere that it is destroyed, that the person that's the head of, say it's a company, is taken to law and is charged. They can't get away with it.
My name is Polly Higgins, and I am a lawyer who loves the earth. I have proposed into the United Nations that we create an international crime called ecocide to close the door to mass damage and destruction to the earth. And I believe that actually within each and every single one of us, if we stand up and give voice on behalf of the earth, then others will stand up and take notice too. Because that's what we need to do here, is stand up and speak out on behalf of the earth, as well as on behalf of many millions of other women. And when we do stand up as women to speak from a place of love, not hate, not anger, but care, then something quite dramatic happens. Because when we speak from a place of love, then we understand our interconnectedness with life itself, that we are interconnected and interdependent with the earth herself. And when we close the door to mass damage and destruction, when we create an international crime of ecocide, then what we start to do is recognize the intrinsic value of not just the earth, but within each and every single one of us. Because of course violence against the earth is violence against ourselves as well, and that is what mass damage and destruction is, ultimately, violence. So I'm asking you as women to stand up and speak out and become a voice for the earth, and call upon our leaders in this world to love the earth, to care for the earth, and take that bold step where we create an international law of ecocide and close the door ultimately to the greatest violence of all that is happening, that is being perpetrated to the very land that we stand upon. This is about moving towards a world of peace, a world where all of us stand together and unite, people and planet. I believe we can get there, and it has to come from women. Because as women we understand that ultimately it's about love, not hate. It's about caring, not about violence. And that it's about all of us, man and woman, standing together in unity with the earth.
Okay ladies, we'll continue on. Okay, so Alison has come, our wonderful person that's going to do a welcome to country. So I'd like you to put your hands for a hearty welcome to Alison.
What are you
you very much. We feel very privileged to have that done for us. Thank you. There's more people here, so I'd like to do another welcome. A welcome to fellow travellers on the road less travelled. I'm sure you all know what that means, how hard it is to travel the road less travelled. Okay, I'll start off now before we have our next act and just share another milestone with you of Australian women. This was in 1887, and it was Dame Nellie Melba took Europe by storm with her debut, and it was not from sport, it was not from politics, it was from the arts. So Australian women have got a lot to be proud there. That was the first time we were recognised on the world screen. It wasn't war, it wasn't sport, but it was Dame Nellie Melba, so I think that's quite amazing. Also in 1895, women voted for the first time in an Australian election, and that was in the South Australian House of Assembly. That was one of the, it's amazing because most countries, even the States, women didn't get to vote until the 20th century. But women in Australia who were voting before that. Also, in 1902, Ada Emily Evans was the first woman to receive a law degree in Australia at Sydney University. But she was unable to practice until 1921. She had to go back to the courts and enact legislation, the New South Wales Women's Legal Status Act of 1918. So before she could even practice law, she had to go back and fight for the fact that she could practice law. So she eventually did in 1921. So that's quite amazing, isn't it? Okay, we'll skip now to 1912. The minimum age for women's work was set in the first Federal Arbitration Award for Women by Mr. Justice Higgins, and this was kept in law until 1950, that women's wages would be 54% of the male rate. Okay, so there you go. Okay, then I've already shared with you the first International Women's Day in Australia, which was held in the Sydney Domain in 1928. In 1933, the first birth control clinic in Australia set up in Sydney, and it was a Radical Hygiene Association that started this. In 1960, it became the Family Planning Association. Then we'll skip right up to 4950, continuing the basic wage story. The basic wage inquiry held for the first time women's organisations, the National Council of Women and the Australian Federation of Business and Professional Clubs made submissions for equal pay. The female basic wage was then established, but equal pay was not. It was only 75% of the male rate. Okay, so that's 1950. Then we skip up to 1962. For the first time, the right to vote in a Commonwealth election was formally extended to Indigenous Australians under the amendment of the Commonwealth Electoral Act. I can remember going and voting in that. It was amazing. Okay. Then, in 1966, a bar on married women as permanent employees of the Federal Public Service was abolished. Now that wasn't until 1966. 1967, changes to the Constitution brought Indigenous Australians under the Commonwealth jurisdiction, empowering the Commonwealth to override discriminatorily state-elected legislation, and of course we all know which states that was in. In 1967, a referendum was also met to amend the Constitution to include Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people in official population counts. Voting was made compulsory then in 1963. So we sure have come a long way, haven't we? I mean, not really. the dates are not that far ago, especially for somebody like me. And also, there was women that chained themselves to certain Commonwealth government premises to bring about again more arbitration for equal pay for equal work, and that was in 1969. Still hasn't happened, ladies. I've lost the words. Unusual to me. So we'll jump to 1972. The Australian Conciliation, Australian Arbitration Commission adopted the principle equal pay for equal work, equal value. However, it was estimated that 18% of adult female employees obtained equal pay underneath this ruling, because in most cases, females and males worked under different awards. The Commission continued to state that male wages take account of family considerations and females do not apply. How much the world has changed since 1972. Okay, we'll jump now to 1973. Of course, we get some great stuff in these areas because we had for the first time in decades a Labor government, and they always change things. In 1973, Elizabeth Reed was the first woman's advisor to the Prime Minister and the first such position in the world. Okay. In 1973 also, the federal voting age was lowered to 18. 1974, the first women's liberation movement, Halfway House Refuge for battered women, opened in Kew, Victoria. I was also involved in the first women's refuge in Sydney, which is in Glebe. We were very fortunate that the Church of England gave us a house, and it was full continuously. It was an amazing thing because women, a lot of you ladies looking around, you're probably of a much different generation. Women didn't have anywhere to go. They had no money, they had no income. And when they had a partner that was aggressive and of course battered, and it's still called, I don't know whether it's still called abuse, I think it's called now, they had nowhere to go. Often their families turned them out, etc. You should go back to your husband and make a go of it and, you know, keep on getting bashed and bashed and bashed. Unfortunately, that was the culture. So we decided something had to change, and we were very fortunate to get that house in Glebe. Also in 1974, I'll just make this the last one before Simone and Blair get started, the first National Feminist and Social Conference was held in the University of Melbourne. Themselves organised, but I'd just like to share a few things with you in the meantime. Many years ago, there was the first International AIDS Day, and they had such a fantastic slogan on, and I've still got it on my fridge. It says, think globally, act locally. It's such a good message, isn't it? You can think about the world, but don't get too caught up in it. Be the butterfly and just do it locally, because it's amazing what one person can achieve. Now, at this time too, I think it's probably a good idea if we, fellow comrades, salute all women of the past, the present and the future. Hail, hail, hail. There's not enough of it done these days of women actually getting up and saying, comrades, Western women have been turned against each other by the various means of media where we compete with each other. Instead of being in traditional societies, sisters get together of all ages and share. And that's how traditional societies are so well run and very happy. Yes, ladies, this is Sherrin and Herod Shivar, and she is going to, she's a marine archaeologist, and she swam around Jeju Island in Korea. Jeju, sorry. I'll let her tell you where she swam, but it's a life-changing experience. If you'd like to come up to the podium.
and it just feels great to be here with so many wild women. My name is Sherrin Hibbard, and I'm a swimmer. My background, I used to be a commercial fisherman. I was a boat builder. I've sailed yachts and I've sailed on tall ships. So I have a very maritime background. So I really love the sea. In 2004, I found myself on Jeju Island in South Korea. It's an island, it's 200 kilometres around. It's about 100 kilometres off the coast of southern Korea, kind of near Japan. I went there, I was going to teach English. I was supposed to stay there just 1 year, but I found out that they had shamans there, and they had henyo. Shamans and the henyo were the women's thing. Women shamans, they run the spiritual life in Jeju Island. There's Buddhists and there's Christians, but shamanism is very, very strong. Most of the shamans are women. They also had henyo. Henyo are women from about in their 30s up to their 90s who take a breath of air and they dive down under the water and they collect seashells and they sell it. Very powerful women. As a fisherman, I was amazed. I finally get to see other women who make a living from the sea. So that was pretty cool. So many things kept me on this island, the shamans and the henyo. So this is a really beautiful island. It's marketed as the Hawaii of Asia. It has a reputation for being very clean and pristine, but it's not. And my first 2 years, I lived near the beach, and I got involved with the henyos. I ended up doing the henyo school. So they taught me how to dive and hold my breath and collect the seafood. I would get under the water and I would fill up my net instead of with abalone or whatever they were catching. I would pick up all the cans and bottles and I create a little bit of a media sensation over in Jeju Island. They've never seen a Westerner doing this stuff. So pretty well every week there were TV cameras. And it was a fantastic opportunity. They'd ask me, what have you got in your net? And I'd hold it up for the camera and I'd say, look at all this rubbish. And in the beginning they laughed at me. But after about 3 weeks, they asked me, why are you picking up the rubbish? And I said, well, you know, we make our living from the sea. We have to protect it. We have to care for it. And these women, they were in complete agreement. So they started to collect the rubbish too. Any rubbish that they saw on the seafloor, they collected. As I got to know the language and the culture more and more, I started to get a bit cranky. Just seeing the 600 squid boats fishing just outside where I lived. The way that the kids would go to the shops and get an ice cream and undo their wrappers and just throw it on the ground. So I used to bitch a lot. You know, bloody Koreans, you know, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I read about this guy, and this guy, he swam the Amazon, and he was old and he was fat. And I thought to myself, well, I really want to do something to try and bring awareness to this fact that Jeju Island is not as clean as the media makes out, that, you know, this is the brand. So I saw this guy, and I thought, gee, he could swim the Amazon, maybe I could swim around Jeju Island. So I kind of got the idea that I would harness the media and maybe shame, as a foreigner, maybe shame the locals a little bit into realising what they had. So I kind of got this idea together that I would swim around Jeju Island. Everybody I spoke to said it couldn't be done. They just laughed at me. And I put it out there. At first I wanted a big motorboat with a shower and someone to cook and be my support vessel. Then I kind of thought, well, that's not really what my message is about. So I ended up, found this guy, and he was my sea kayaker. So Steve Oberhausen, American, heard that I was looking to swim around Jeju Island and was looking for somebody to come with me. So I swam and Steve sea kayaked. It was 200 kilometres. I swam 3/4 of the way around, ran out of time, so I didn't get all the way around, but Steve did. So I trained, or I thought I trained. The first 3 days I got in the water and I thought I was going to die. Like, what have I committed to? I had 2 days off and I kind of got back in the water and I swam another 3 days. I had another 2 days off. But after that, I felt like Superwoman. It was great. And I'd get out of the water, swimming 10, 15 kilometres a day, and there was heaps of media. What a platform. Here was this crazy Western woman swimming around this island. It was all over Korea, it was on the news, it was everywhere. It was a fantastic opportunity to get the message out. What are you doing? The main thing I wanted to try and get across was, if everybody did what they can, the world would be a lot better place, and particularly Jeju, environmentally. We can't all fix all the ills of the world, but we all can do something. And what I saw in Jeju was people weren't doing anything. And that was as much a cultural thing as anything else, but that's a different story. Anyway, I swam around the island, and it was so sad. It was even worse condition than I thought. The fish were very small because of the overfishing. The water smelled like sewage, sometimes it smelled like oil, and a lot of times it smelled like dead fish. And I would literally be swimming through garbage. And as a swimmer, what I found most disturbing was that garbage just wasn't on the surface. It was down there as well. It was all distributed through the water column. So I had lots of stories about pollution and rubbish to tell people every day when I came out of the water. And then there was this one day, nearly 3/4 of the way around the island, and we swam through the harbour to have a sandwich, something to eat, a bit of a break. And I said to Steve, wow, there's no rubbish here. Where are we? So we got the map out and he went, oh, we're in a place called Gangjong. So I'm like, wow. The water tasted salty and it tasted fresh. It was the first time and the only time on that whole swim that I swam through clean water. So that was all good. Another week, 2 weeks, and I finished the swim. So that was a really good thing to do. About 2 years after, or not even 2 years, maybe 1.5 years after my swim, that area, Gangjong, the government has decided that they want to build a Navy base there. To build this Navy base, they have to destroy the only soft coral reef that's in Korea. They've now brought in, there's been so much protest, there is so much, people don't want it, the local people don't want it, the government is doing all kinds of skullduggery stuff to try and get this pushed through. It's all men in suits who live in Seoul. Yesterday, I read that they were going to blast. They were finally going to get the dynamite and they were going to blast. They're going to blast this reef so that they can make room to make this naval base. We can't fix all the ills of the world, but we can do some things. So I have some information here. I want to let you know that this is going on and that you could get on the internet and you could send an email to the people at the Korean Embassy in Australia. And if everybody in this room did that, we might have a chance of saving Jeju Island from the Navy base. So if anybody would like to come and talk to me about it, I can give them addresses, I can give them more information. So I just wanted to share that with you, and I hope that we all can get on the internet and we all can send an email, and I hope that we will. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon, that was fabulous. So I'll share some more milestones with you. We're going to jump now to, ladies and gentlemen and children, to 1986. Pat O'Shea became the first Aboriginal woman to be appointed magistrate by the New South Wales government. Also, they seem to dovetail each other. The same year, Justice Elizabeth Evatt became the first woman president of the Australian Law Reform Commission. 1987. a national policy was introduced in education for Australian schools for girls. For the first time in 1987, women surpassed men in the participation in higher education. And also, in 1987, school retention rates for girls exceeded those of boys for the first time. So it wasn't until 1987. It's quite amazing, isn't it? Okay, this is an interesting one. In 1987, Mary Goldran became the first woman of the Justice of the High Court. So that wasn't until 1987, the Justice of the High Court. Kathy Freeman in 1990 was the first Aboriginal woman to win a gold medal in the Commonwealth Games. And we go on a bit more. Equal pay unit of the Department of Industrial Relations was established. So we've gone all that way. Before I share any more milestones, I was going to today as well. I did a talk about 5 years ago at an International Women's Day, and I did it about myself, and I called it Snapshots in the Life of a Volunteer. I started to volunteer in the 50s in the schoolyard. I got a Junior Red Cross certificate, and if anybody hurt themselves, I was only 9 myself, I would go and help, you know. And I have continued all my life, I turned 67 in January, to do voluntary work. I'm currently still doing voluntary work. My husband and I did many projects, and I was going to run through it, like the milestones, but we've got so much more information to get out, so I'll just push on with this. Let's go now to 1994. Home childcare allowance was introduced. Doesn't seem that long ago, does it? 1995, amendments to the Sex Discrimination Act to include discrimination on the grounds of potential pregnancies became effective. 1996, Gloria Shipp became the first female Aboriginal to be ordained as an Anglican priest. That's amazing because they're still in the Sydney diocese, still going on. They're totally against women priests. I don't think they should be called women priests. I think they should be called priestesses, because that's what they are. And that's what women have always been throughout the different ancient cultures. They weren't women priests, they were priestesses. And I think it's a much nicer word too. Okay, we'll push on now, getting very close to the year 2000. Are you ready? No, not quite ready yet, okay. In October 1999, the female labour force participation rate of over 55% for women over the age of 15 was the highest on record. Also in 1999, the representation of Indigenous women on the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Reconciliation Councils increased to a record 30%. That was until 1999. Dawn Fraser, in 1999, was also named the best female swimmer of the century and Australia's female athlete of the century, and was among the only Australian among international winners of sports stars in the Century Awards. So she's quite an amazing woman, Dawn Fraser. Those of you that might not know, she created quite a storm because she put up an Australian flag at the Tokyo Olympics. She was disbarred from competing because she had the audacity to put up the Australian flag. Amazing stuff. Now, while they're getting set up, we're going to have another lady's going to come and talk to us, a lady called Donna, and she'll be coming to talk soon. But in the meantime, I'll share some more interesting milestones with you. Here's the lovely lady now. Donna's going to, sorry, I'll just get this surname. Donna Bernard does all sorts of spiritual guidance, things like tarot, astrology, and also she's experiencing Celtic history. And she's going to talk to you today about a journey, not only of the heart, but also of the physical body.
Thank you. And good afternoon, everyone. My name's Donna, and I'm a seeress in the old tradition. I'm also a member of the British way of being, of the old spiritual mysteries of the land. And it's been interesting to listen today of some of the achievements of women over the last 200 years, and you know how we've been given the right to vote and how we've fought for equal pay, and you know, and the milestones that have happened. And it's great to be able to celebrate that. But in a way, it's also sad when we look back at history and we look back at civilisations such as the early Celtic civilisation, at a time when women were very empowered and shared equal responsibility with the men. So how far we came then to be subjugated to rise again? Because in early Celtic history, women not only had the right to be politicians, they had the right to be judges, they had the right to be doctors, they had the right to train alongside the male druids and become druidesses. They were respected as seeresses in their own right and diviners. They were renowned for their healing abilities. They were also the keepers of the sacred crafts: spinning, weaving, dyeing, basket making. So with those crafts as well, they were well revered for the role that they played in society as nurturers. There's a lot of secrets in the art of basket keeping. And it was so that the women never used to like to see people watch them begin or end a basket, because they felt that it diminished the magic that was held within the structure of the basket. And of course the basket was a container for holding the nourishment. So they were widely respected for their roles of nurturers as well. There was also a tradition amongst the ancient people of venerating their dead and working with the ancestral spirits of the land. And that's something I think that's also important as we move through these quite difficult times for some areas of the world. It's important that we go back to that ancient knowledge and again bring alive those practices of going and making the blessings at the power sites of the land, of thanking those who have gone before and those who will come again, of really being in tune with the natural world, because that's where the greatest power is. It's not about money, it's not about buildings, it's not about, you know, how much you can do on a material level. It's about the fundamentals and getting back to nature. Because the ancient ones, the spirits of the land, are with us always. And they desperately want us to reconnect. They want us to go and scry in the pools again and learn their wisdom. They want us to go and read the signs that are everywhere, in the flight of the birds, in the patterns of the ants that walk across the landscape. All this was magic that was shared in the olden times, and it was known by the women, by the grandmothers who would pass it on to the mothers, who would pass it on to their daughters, to the aunts. These were the wisdom keepers of the tribes. Unfortunately, with the civilisation, if you like, of some of the Celtic countries, brought in by the Romans, brought in by the Christianisation of the countries, a lot of this wisdom was subjugated. Women were suppressed. They were feared. They were feared for their knowledge. The great tradition of herbalism was suppressed for such a long time and thought to be hocus pocus. Women knew how to birth. They brought life into the world, and they were there to help life pass. By their herbal knowledge, they looked after not only the people of the village, they looked after the animals, and that was vital in a society that relied on crops and on livestock. So there's been so much damage that has been brought into the world by synthetics, by chemicals, that's tried to replace what is there for us all to rediscover and tap back into again. Not only is it kinder to us, it's kinder to the animals, it's kinder to our environment, and it's kinder to our great mother, the earth. So I think that it's very important, particularly as we're heading to these times of 2012 and beyond, that we all take a moment to look, to reconnect, to find our way again and get back to a more simplified way of living. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Donna. Hi everybody. I'd just like to, if we could maybe do a big yippee or hands together or cheerio, whatever suits you, or screaming out for Sarah for getting it organised here today. I'd just like to say what an honour it's been for me to celebrate International Women's Day and to share in the jubilation of Wutu. Thank you for all that made it here today.